They say a mother's love is limitless, but no one really warns you about what happens when loneliness stretches that love thin. When silence eats away at the parts of you that once felt whole, and when need disguises itself as care so quietly that you don't realize you are standing at the edge of something unforgivable until the ground almost gives way beneath your feet. And I've lived with that truth every single day since my son turned 18, since that ordinary evening that should have been nothing more than balloons losing air, a half-cut cake drying on the counter, and laughter echoing off walls that had grown far too familiar with quiet because our house always looked warm from the outside, but inside it carried a stillness that pressed against my chest. The kind that makes you feel invisible even when you're standing right in the middle of the room. And that night, the air smelled like vanilla frosting and melted candle wax. That soft, nostalgic scent that pulls memories from childhood whether you want them or not. But beneath it there was something heavier, something unspoken, like a warning my heart tried to whisper before my mind was ready to listen. And when I looked across the table at him, my son, my baby, who wasn't really a baby anymore, I saw him differently for the first time. Not as the little boy who used to cling to my legs, but as someone standing on the edge of adulthood. His voice deeper, his posture calmer, his smile still familiar but carrying a confidence that made me proud and uneasy all at once. Because no one prepares you for the moment you realize your child is changing faster than your heart can keep up. And that night, nothing dramatic happened at first. No raised voices, no sudden confessions, just small moments piling up quietly, laughter lingering a little too long, conversations stretching past where they normally would. And when he teased me about my grey hairs and I laughed back, something inside me cracked open, because after years of feeling unseen, even the smallest attention can feel like oxygen, and I should have stopped it there, should have cleaned the dishes, should have gone to bed, should have reminded myself who I was and who he was, but instead I stayed, I talked, I listened. And with every word, the distance between us felt smaller in a way that scared me later, and when he looked at me with that soft sincerity and said things like how much he appreciated me, how much I understood him, I felt a warmth that didn't belong there, not because it was wrong in itself, but because of where it was coming from and what part of me it was filling. And when the house grew quiet and the night settled around us, I realized how lonely I had become long before that evening, how my marriage had turned into something practical and empty, how my husband and I had stopped seeing each other as people and started existing like polite strangers, sharing responsibilities, and in that emptiness, my son had become the one person who noticed when I was tired, when my voice wavered, when I skipped meals. And that awareness had slowly shifted from comfort into something dangerously close to dependence. And when he asked, gently, almost hesitantly, if we could spend more time together like we used to, something about the way he said it made my chest tighten, not because of what he asked, but because of what I felt responding inside me. And that was the moment I should have drawn a clear line, should have smiled and redirected. should have reminded both of us of the roles we held, but instead I hesitated, and hesitation can be its own kind of betrayal. Because that pause allowed thoughts I should never have entertained to flicker through my mind. And later that night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, guilt wrapped itself around me like cold air, because I knew something had shifted even though nothing tangible had happened. And the next morning everything felt heavier, the silence sharper, and I caught something in his eyes too. Not desire, not intention, but awareness, and that terrified me more than anything else, because it meant the line wasn't just blurred for me, and over the next days I tried to pull back, to act normal, to remind myself that love sometimes disguises itself as need when you're starving for affection. But avoidance only made the weight grow heavier, and every kind word, every small compliment landed differently than it should have, until one late night when exhaustion and emotion collided and he stood in my doorway unable to sleep, looking younger and older all at once. And in that moment everything inside me screamed for me to be strong, to be a mother, to protect him and myself from something neither of us fully understood. And as he spoke about feeling alone, about feeling like I was the only one who truly understood him, the truth finally crashed into me with brutal clarity. That this wasn't love trying to cross a boundary, it was pain reaching for the nearest comfort, and that if I didn't stop it then, I would destroy both of us in ways that could never be undone. And with my heart pounding and my hands shaking, I did the hardest thing I had done in years. I said no, not harshly, not angrily, but firmly drawing a line with words that felt like they were cutting through my own chest, telling him that some spaces must remain sacred no matter how lonely you feel, that some roles exist to protect us from ourselves. And I watched confusion and hurt flicker across his face before he nodded and stepped back. And when the door closed, I collapsed into silent tears, not because something terrible had happened, but because something terrible almost had, and the realization of how close I came to crossing a line I could never uncross haunted me more than any action ever could, and in the days that followed, the house felt different, heavier but clearer, because I was forced to confront the truth I had avoided for years. That my loneliness was not my son's burden to carry, that my unmet needs did not justify emotional dependence, and that love without boundaries can become destructive even when it starts from a pure place. And I don't tell this story because I want sympathy or absolution. I tell it because it nearly broke me to realize how quietly loneliness can erode judgment. How easily guilt can be born from silence rather than action, and how important it is to stop before the point of no return. Because some mistakes don't need to happen to leave scars, some lines don't need to be crossed to change you forever, and I live with that lesson every day, reminding myself that being seen should never come at the cost of becoming someone you can no longer recognize in the mirror.